The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in October 1882, and Fiona Walsh held it in her trembling hands as she stood in the cramped Philadelphia boarding house room that had been her prison for 26 years. She had never been called beautiful, not once in her entire life, and the advertisement she had answered made no mention of her appearance because there was nothing remarkable to mention. Plain Fiona, homely Fiona, the girl with the crooked nose broken by her father's fist when she was 12, the woman with the scar along her jawline from a kitchen accident, the spinster with mousy brown hair and eyes the color of dishwater. She read the acceptance letter 3 times before she believed it was real. Quinton Oakes, a cattle rancher in Yerington, Nevada, needed a wife, and he was willing to pay her passage west on the Transcontinental Railroad. Her hands shook as she packed her meager belongings into a battered carpetbag. The other women in the boarding house whispered behind their hands when she walked past, their voices carrying through the thin walls. "Can you imagine who would want her?" one said. "Perhaps he's desperate," another replied. "Perhaps he's uglier than she is." Their laughter followed Fiona down the stairs and out into the gray Philadelphia morning. The train journey took 6 days, and Fiona spent most of it pressed against the window, watching the landscape transform from crowded eastern cities to endless western plains. She had sewn her life savings into the hem of her only good dress, $32 that represented years of work as a seamstress. The other passengers kept their distance, mothers pulling their children away when Fiona smiled at them, men looking through her as if she were invisible. She was accustomed to this treatment. Beauty opened doors that remained forever closed to women like her. Yerington, Nevada appeared on the horizon like a mirage, a small cluster of wooden buildings surrounded by sage brush and distant mountains. The October sun beat down mercilessly despite the autumn season, and dust devils danced across the main street as the stagecoach from the nearest railroad station rolled to a stop. Fiona climbed down, her legs unsteady after the journey, her dress wrinkled and dusty. She scanned the handful of people gathered near the general store, wondering which one was Quinton Oakes. A tall man separated himself from the others and walked toward her with long, purposeful strides. He wore dusty work clothes, a weather-beaten hat, and boots that had seen hard use. His face was tanned from years in the sun, with crow's feet at the corners of his hazel eyes and a strong jaw covered with several days' growth of beard. He was somewhere in his early 30s, she guessed, and when he reached her, he removed his hat and studied her face for a long moment. Fiona braced herself for the disappointment she knew would come, the tightening around his eyes, the forced politeness that would barely mask his regret. She had seen it 1,000 times before. Instead, Quinton Oakes smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes and transformed his entire face. "Miss Walsh," he said, his voice deep and warm, "you're even more beautiful than I imagined." Fiona blinked, certain she had misheard. "I beg your pardon, you're beautiful," he repeated, still smiling. He reached for her carpetbag, his fingers brushing hers. "The journey must have been exhausting. Let me take you home." She stood frozen, unable to process his words. No one had ever called her beautiful. Not her mother, who had died when Fiona was 8. Not her father, who had called her worthless and ugly until drink finally killed him 5 years ago. Not the boys who had courted her prettier sister. Not the men at the factories where she had worked. Not the women at the boarding house who had pitied her. "Are you feeling well, Miss Walsh?" Quinton asked, concern replacing his smile. "You look pale." "I am fine," she managed, though she was anything but fine. Her world had tilted on its axis. "I am just tired from the journey." His wagon was waiting at the edge of town, a sturdy vehicle pulled by 2 draft horses. Quinton helped her onto the seat with a gentleness that surprised her, his hand steady under her elbow. As they rolled out of Yarrington toward the open range, he pointed out landmarks: the Walker River in the distance, the Pine Grove Mountains to the south, the vast expanse of his ranch that stretched for thousands of acres. "It is not much to look at right now," he said, gesturing at the sagebrush and scattered cattle. "But it is home. I have been working this land for 8 years, building it up from nothing. I have a house, a barn, good water rights, and a decent herd. What I did not have was someone to share it with." "Why did you not marry someone from town?" Fiona asked, the question slipping out before she could stop it. Quinton was quiet for a moment, his eyes on the horizon. "The women in Yarrington are fine people," he said carefully. "But they want things I cannot give them. They want a house in town, social gatherings, a life that is easier than what ranch life offers. I need a partner, Miss Walsh, someone who is willing to work beside me to build something lasting. When I read your letter, your honesty about what you wanted from life, I knew you were the one." Fiona remembered what she had written, the words she had agonized over for days. She had been honest to a fault, explaining that she had no family, no prospects, no beauty to recommend her. She had written that she was strong, hardworking, skilled with a needle and in a kitchen, and that she asked only for a chance at a decent life. She had not expected poetry or romance, just basic human kindness. The ranch house appeared in the distance, a low wooden structure with a covered porch and a stone chimney. It was small but well maintained, surrounded by cottonwood trees that provided shade. The barn was larger than the house, built of solid timber, with a corral attached. Several horses lifted their heads as the wagon approached, and a border collie came running from the porch, barking a greeting. "That is Scout," Quinton said, his voice warming. "He is supposed to help with the cattle, but mostly he keeps me company. I hope you like dogs." "I do," Fiona said, watching the dog circle the wagon excitedly. "I have never had one, but I always wanted one." Quinton stopped the wagon in front of the house and jumped down, then came around to help Fiona descend. His hands were strong and calloused, the hands of a man who worked with them every day. Scout immediately pushed his nose into Fiona's skirt, tail wagging furiously, and she bent to pet him, laughing when he licked her hand. "He approves," Quinton said, grinning. "That is a good sign." "He is usually more suspicious of strangers." Fiona looked up at him, the afternoon sun behind his head creating a halo effect. "Mr. Oakes, I must be honest with you. I am confused about something you said earlier." "Call me Quinton, please. We are going to be married after all." "What confuses you? You called me beautiful," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know what I look like. I have a mirror. I have eyes. I have spent my entire life being told I am plain at best, ugly at worst. Why would you lie to me?" Quinton's expression grew serious. He took off his hat and ran his hand through his dark hair, thinking carefully before he spoke. "Miss Walsh, Fiona, I am not lying to you. When I look at you, I see a beautiful woman. I see strength in the set of your shoulders, courage in the way you traveled all this way alone to meet a stranger, kindness in the way you greeted my dog. I see eyes that are honest and clear, a mouth that looks like it is ready to smile if given half a reason. That crooked nose you are so conscious of, it gives your face character. That scar on your jaw, it speaks of survival. You are beautiful to me, and I intend to tell you that every single day we are together." Tears pricked at Fiona's eyes, and she blinked them back furiously. She was not a woman who cried easily. Life had taught her that tears changed nothing. But his words had cracked something open inside her chest, some hard shell she had built around her heart. "I do not know what to say," she whispered. "Say you will give this a chance," Quinton replied. "Give us a chance," I know this is not a conventional arrangement, but I believe we can make a good life together. I will work hard to make you happy, Fiona. That is my promise to you." She looked at the house, the barn, the mountains in the distance, and the man standing before her with such earnest hope in his eyes. She thought about the cold boarding house in Philadelphia, the endless days of sewing in dim light, the loneliness that had been her constant companion. She thought about the way he had called her beautiful, twice now, as if it were a simple truth rather than a cruel joke. "I will give it a chance," she said, and for the first time in years she felt something like hope stirring in her chest. Quinton showed her through the house, apologizing for its modest size and rough furnishings. There were 2 rooms, a main area that served as kitchen, dining room and sitting room combined, and a bedroom separated by a heavy curtain. The furniture was handmade but sturdy, and everything was surprisingly clean for a bachelor's home. "I have been sleeping in the barn since I got your letter accepting my proposal," Quinton said, his neck reddening slightly. "I thought you should have the bedroom until after we are married. The preacher in town can perform the ceremony whenever you are ready. There is no rush. I want you to feel comfortable here first." His consideration touched her deeply. "That is very kind," Fiona said. "But you do not have to sleep in the barn. I trust you, Quinton. We can wait a few days to marry. Give me time to settle in and prepare. Perhaps Sunday, that gives us 4 days. Relief crossed his face. "Sunday would be perfect. That is settled then. Now you must be hungry. Let me show you the kitchen stores and you can tell me what you need. Tomorrow I will take you into town properly, introduce you to folks and let you shop for anything you want." The kitchen area was well stocked with basics: flour, salt, coffee, dried beans, cured meat. There were jars of preserved vegetables on shelves, eggs in a basket, and a good iron stove. Fiona ran her hand over the stove, already planning meals in her mind. "This is more than adequate," she said. "If you have vegetables in a garden, I can make us a proper supper tonight." "There is a garden out back," Quinton said. "It is not much, just what I have been able to maintain myself. Potatoes, carrots, onions, some herbs. I am afraid I am not much of a gardener." "Then I will improve it," Fiona said decisively. "That is something I know how to do. My mother had a wonderful garden before she died, and she taught me well." They worked together to prepare the evening meal, Fiona directing and Quinton following her instructions without complaint. He was easy to work with, anticipating what she needed, making space for her in his kitchen without fuss. They talked as they cooked, the conversation flowing more naturally than Fiona would have expected. Quinton asked about her journey, her life in Philadelphia, her family. She found herself telling him things she had never told anyone about her father's drinking, her sister's marriage and move to California, the lonely years in the boarding house. "You have had a hard life," Quinton said quietly when she finished. "That is going to change now. I promise you, Fiona, life here will be hard in different ways. The work is demanding and the land can be unforgiving, but you will never be alone again. You will never be unwanted." "You barely know me," she protested. "How can you make such promises?" "I know enough," he said firmly. "I know you are honest, hardworking, and brave. I know you have survived things that would have broken weaker people. I know that when you smile, which you have not done nearly enough yet, it lights up your whole face. That is enough for me to build on." They ate supper on the porch as the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Scout lay at their feet, hopeful for scraps. The air cooled quickly once the sun disappeared, and Fiona pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders. "It gets cold at night, even in October," Quinton said. "By December we will have snow, not as much as back east, but enough. The winters here are different from Philadelphia, drier, clearer. I think you will like them." "I hope so," Fiona said. I have never been fond of winter, but perhaps that was because I spent them in a drafty boarding house with insufficient coal for the stove. This house is tight and warm, Quinton assured her. I made sure of that, and we have plenty of wood. You will be comfortable, I swear it. After they finished eating, Quinton insisted on cleaning up while Fiona unpacked her carpetbag in the bedroom. Her possessions looked pitifully small spread out on the bed: 3 dresses, undergarments, a nightgown, her sewing kit, a few books, a daguerreotype of her mother. She hung the dresses on pegs along the wall and placed the photograph on the small table beside the bed. When she emerged, Quinton was banking the fire in the stove for the night. He looked up and smiled at her. All settled? Yes, thank you. Quinton, before you go to the barn, I want to say something. He straightened, giving her his full attention. Of course. Thank you for today, she said. For calling me beautiful even though I do not understand it, for being kind, for making me feel welcome. I was terrified on that train, wondering what I was traveling toward. You have eased my fears considerably. Quinton crossed the room until he stood in front of her, not touching but close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. Fiona, I meant what I said earlier. You are beautiful, and I am going to tell you that every day. You do not have to believe me yet, but eventually, I hope you will see yourself the way I see you. He picked up his hat from the table and headed for the door. Sleep well. If you need anything during the night, come get me. I will leave Scout with you for company. After he left, Fiona stood in the middle of the quiet house with the dog at her feet and felt the strangest sensation wash over her. It took her a moment to recognize it. Happiness. She was happy. After 26 years of being invisible, dismissed, and alone, she had traveled 2,000 miles to a place she had never seen to marry a man she had never met. And for the first time in her life, she felt like she might actually belong somewhere. The next 4 days passed in a blur of activity. Quinton took her to town the next morning as promised, introducing her to the shopkeeper, the blacksmith, the owner of the hotel, and anyone else they encountered. The women of Yarrington were polite but reserved, clearly curious about the mail-order bride their eligible bachelor rancher had sent for. Fiona saw the questions in their eyes, the same questions she had lived with her entire life. Why her? What does he see in her? But Quinton never wavered. When Mrs. Henderson at the general store made a thinly veiled comment about how surprised everyone was at his choice, Quinton simply smiled and said, "Then everyone else is blind, because I got myself the most beautiful woman in Nevada." He said it loud enough for half the store to hear, and Fiona felt her face flame with embarrassment and something else, something warm and precious that she was afraid to name. They bought supplies. Fabric for new dresses, seeds for the garden, household items Fiona needed. Quinton paid for everything without hesitation, brushing aside her protests. "You are my wife, or will be in 3 days," he said. "Your comfort is my responsibility and my pleasure." Back at the ranch, they fell into an easy routine. Fiona rose early and made breakfast while Quinton tended the animals. They ate together, then he would head out to check on his cattle or mend fences while she tackled the house and garden. He always returned for lunch, and they would sit together and talk about their morning, sharing stories and laughter. In the evenings, they cooked supper together and sat on the porch until the stars came out. And every morning when Quinton came in for breakfast, he would smile at her and say, "Good morning, beautiful." Every evening when he returned for supper, he would greet her with, "How has my beautiful wife to be spent her day?" He never repeated himself exactly, but he always found a way to call her beautiful, and each time he said it, Fiona felt a little more of her disbelief chip away. On Saturday evening, the night before their wedding, Quinton came in from his work looking more serious than usual. Fiona was preparing supper and she turned from the stove with concern. "Is something wrong?" she asked. He shook his head. "No, nothing is wrong. I just want to talk to you about tomorrow, make sure you are still willing. This is your last chance to change your mind, Fiona. If you want to go back to Philadelphia, I will pay your passage. I will not hold you to this if you have doubts." Fiona set down her spoon and wiped her hands on her apron. She had spent the last 4 days watching this man, learning his habits, discovering who he was beneath the surface. She had seen his patience when a fence post broke and had to be reset. She had witnessed his gentleness with the animals, the way he spoke to the horses and scratched Scout behind the ears. She had experienced his consideration, the way he always asked her opinion, listened to her ideas, made space for her in every aspect of his life. And she had felt the way her heart had begun to open, like a flower that had been waiting years for the right conditions to bloom. "I have no doubts," she said firmly. "Do you?" "None whatsoever," Quinton replied immediately. "I just needed to be certain you felt the same. Fiona, I know we have only known each other 4 days, but I need you to know something. I am already falling in love with you. I did not expect it to happen so fast, but there it is. You do not have to say anything back. I just wanted you to know where I stand." The words hung in the air between them, honest and vulnerable. Fiona felt her throat tighten with emotion. "How?" she whispered. "How could you be falling in love with me? You do not really know me yet." Quinton crossed the room until he stood before her. Slowly, giving her time to pull away, he reached up and cupped her face in his work-roughened hands. "I know that you hum while you cook. I know that you talk to Scout when you think no one is listening. I know that you reorganized my entire kitchen in 1 day and somehow made it more efficient. I know that you cry when you read sad stories, because I heard you last night through the curtain. I know that you are brave and strong and kind, and that every day I spend with you makes me want the next day even more. That is enough, Fiona. That is more than enough." Before she could respond, he leaned down and kissed her, gentle and sweet. It was Fiona's first real kiss, and it felt like coming home. She reached up and gripped his shirt, anchoring herself, and kissed him back with all the longing she had buried for so many years. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Quinton rested his forehead against hers. "Beautiful," he whispered. "My beautiful Fiona." And for the first time, she almost believed him. The wedding took place on Sunday afternoon in the small church in Yerington. The preacher, Reverend Thomas, performed the ceremony with half the town in attendance. Fiona wore a new dress she had sewn from fabric Quinton had bought her, a deep blue that brought out hints of color in her gray eyes. Quinton wore his best clothes, his hair slicked back, his boots polished. When the preacher asked if Quinton took Fiona to be his lawfully wedded wife, he answered in a clear, strong voice, "I take this beautiful woman to be my wife, for as long as we both shall live." Fiona said her vows with tears in her eyes, and when Quinton kissed her to seal their marriage, she heard some of the women in the congregation sigh. The reception was held at the hotel, with music and dancing and more food than Fiona had seen in months. Quinton never left her side, his hand always at her elbow or the small of her back, quietly claiming her as his own. Mrs. Henderson, the shopkeeper's wife, approached Fiona during a break in the dancing. "Mrs. Oakes," she said, her tone friendlier than it had been at their first meeting. "I must say, your husband looks at you like you hung the moon. We were all surprised when he sent east for a bride, but I can see now that he chose well. Welcome to Yerington." It was a small thing, that welcome, but it meant the world to Fiona. She was no longer the unwanted mail-order bride. She was Mrs. Oakes, wife of Quinton Oakes, and she had a place in this community. They returned to the ranch as the sun was setting, Scout running alongside the wagon. Quinton helped Fiona down and then, without warning, swept her up into his arms. "What are you doing?" She gasped, clutching his shoulders. "Carrying my beautiful wife over the threshold," he said, grinning. "It is tradition." He carried her into the house and set her down gently in the main room. The curtain that had separated the bedroom was gone, removed while they were at the wedding. The bedroom door stood open, inviting. "Fiona," Quinton said softly, taking her hands in his. "We do not have to rush anything. We can take as much time as you need. I want you to be comfortable with me." She looked up at this man who had called her beautiful every day for a week, who had been patient and kind and gentle, who had kissed her like she was precious, who had married her in front of his whole town and declared his feelings without shame. "I am comfortable with you," she said. "I am your wife, Quinton. I want to be your wife in every way." His eyes darkened with something that made her stomach flutter, but his touch remained gentle as he led her to the bedroom. He took his time undressing her, kissing each new bit of skin revealed, murmuring words of praise and appreciation. When she tried to hide her scars, the marks of her difficult past, he kissed those too. "Beautiful," he said, his lips against the scar on her jaw. "Every part of you is beautiful." Fiona had expected pain, awkwardness, discomfort. What she experienced instead was tenderness, patience, and a growing pleasure that built until she cried out, clutching Quinton's shoulders as waves of sensation washed over her. Afterward, he held her close, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her back. "I love you," he said into the darkness. "I know it is fast, but I do. I love you, my beautiful Fiona." "I love you too," she whispered, and realized with shock that it was true. In 1 week, this man had changed her entire world. He had taken a woman who believed she was unlovable and shown her that she was worthy of devotion. "I love you so much, Quinton." He kissed the top of her head. "Then we are the luckiest people in Nevada." The first year of their marriage was not easy, but it was good. Ranch life was demanding, with constant work from sunrise to sunset. Fiona threw herself into making their house a home, sewing curtains and tablecloths, planting a garden that was the envy of every woman in town, learning to preserve food for the harsh winter months. She learned to ride a horse so she could accompany Quinton when he checked on the distant pastures. She learned to help with the calving in the spring, staying up all night with Quinton to tend to difficult births, and through it all, Quinton kept his promise. Every single morning he told her she was beautiful. When she woke with her hair tangled and her eyes puffy from sleep, he called her beautiful. When she was covered in dirt from the garden, he called her beautiful. When she was exhausted and short-tempered after a long day, he called her beautiful. When she cried over a letter from her sister announcing a new baby, he held her and called her beautiful. Slowly, month by month, Fiona began to believe him. She began to see herself through his eyes, capable, strong, worthy of love. She caught her reflection in the window one day and was startled to realize that she looked different. Her face had filled out from regular, good meals. Her skin had a healthy color from time spent outdoors. Her eyes, which she had always thought dull, sparkled when she laughed. She was not beautiful in the conventional sense, would never turn heads in a crowd, but she looked like a woman who was loved. And somehow that made all the difference. Winter came and went, harsh but manageable. Spring brought new life to the ranch. Calves, foals, baby chicks. Summer was hot and dry, with long days of hard work. By the time autumn arrived again, marking their first anniversary, Fiona had news that made her nervous and excited in equal measure. She told Quinton over supper, blurting it out before she could lose her nerve. "I am with child." He froze with his fork halfway to his mouth, then slowly set it down. "Are you certain?" "As certain as I can be without seeing a doctor." I am 3 months late with my courses, and I have been sick in the mornings. I think the baby will come in the spring, probably April or May." Quinton stood up so fast his chair tipped backward. He came around the table and pulled Fiona into his arms, holding her tight. "A baby," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "We are going to have a baby. Oh, Fiona, you beautiful, wonderful woman, you have made me the happiest man alive." "You are not worried?" she asked, her face pressed against his chest. "About the doctor bills, the expense, all the things that could go wrong?" "Of course I am worried," he admitted. "I would be lying if I said otherwise, but I am more excited than worried. We are going to be parents, Fiona. We are going to have a family." He pulled back and cupped her face in his hands, looking at her with such love that her breath caught. "You are so beautiful," he said. "You are carrying our child and you are glowing with it. I love you so much." The pregnancy was not easy. Fiona was sick for the first 4 months, barely able to keep food down. Quinton was endlessly patient, holding her hair when she was ill, making her weak tea and toast, taking over all the heavy chores without complaint. When the sickness finally passed, she bloomed, growing round and healthy. Quinton would put his hand on her belly at night, marveling at the movements within. "Hello in there," he would say to her stomach. "I am your father and I cannot wait to meet you. Your mother is the most beautiful woman in the world, and I hope you have her strength and courage." Fiona would laugh and push his hand away. "You are going to spoil this child rotten." "Absolutely," he would agree, grinning. "That is a father's job." In March, 2 months before the baby was due, Quinton's younger brother Silas arrived unexpectedly from California. He was 28, charming and handsome in a way Quinton was not, with an easy smile and quick wit. Fiona liked him immediately, though she sensed trouble in his restlessness, the way he could not seem to settle. "I needed a fresh start," Silas explained over supper on his first night. "Things did not work out in Sacramento. I was hoping I could stay here for a while, help out on the ranch, earn my keep." "Of course you can stay," Quinton said, though Fiona saw the concern in his eyes. "Family is always welcome. We can use the help, especially with the baby coming." Silas was true to his word, working hard alongside Quinton during the day. But Fiona noticed the way he watched her sometimes, not with attraction but with puzzlement, as if he could not quite figure out what his brother saw in her. One afternoon, when Quinton was out on the range, Silas confronted her about it. "I do not mean any offense," he said carefully, helping her carry water from the well. "But I have to ask. Quinton could have had his pick of women. Hell, half the unmarried women in Yarrington threw themselves at him before he sent for a mail-order bride. Why do you think he chose you?" Fiona should have been hurt, but she had spent too long in her new confidence to let Silas's words wound her. "Because he loves me," she said simply. "Because we make each other happy, that is all that matters." "But you are not." Silas stopped, struggling for words. "You are not what I expected." "You mean I am not beautiful," Fiona said bluntly. "You can say it, Silas, I know what I look like." "It is not that," Silas protested, though they both knew he was lying. "It is just Quinton deserves someone special." "I am special," Fiona said firmly. "I am special to him, and he is special to me. I am sorry if that does not make sense to you, but it does not have to. Our marriage is not your business." Quinton came home that evening to find Silas chopping wood with unusual vigor and Fiona preparing supper with a set expression. He looked between them and sighed. "What happened?" "Nothing," Fiona said. "Your brother and I simply had a conversation about expectations." Quinton waited until after supper, when Silas had gone to the barn where he was sleeping, before he pulled Fiona into his arms. "Did he say something to upset you? Because if he did, brother or not, I will have words with him." "He asked me why you chose me," Fiona said. "He did not understand what you see in me. It is all right, Quinton. I am used to people wondering." "It is not all right," Quinton said fiercely. "You are my wife, the mother of my child and the love of my life. I do not care if the whole world questions my choice. I know what I have, and I thank God for you every single day." He tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You are beautiful, Fiona. Inside and out. Your beauty is not the kind that fades with age or relies on perfect features. It is the kind that grows stronger every year, the kind that comes from character and strength and love. Silas does not see it because he is young and foolish and has never looked past the surface of anything in his life. But I see it. I have always seen it." "I see it too now," Fiona whispered. "When I look in the mirror, I see what you see. A woman who is loved, a woman who has worth. You gave me that, Quinton. You gave me myself." They stood there in the fading light, holding each other, the baby moving between them. Silas left a week later, claiming he had found work in Virginia City. Quinton saw him off without much ceremony, and after he was gone, the ranch felt peaceful again. The baby came on a warm evening in late April, 3 weeks earlier than expected. Fiona's water broke while she was feeding the chickens, and she barely had time to get back to the house before the contractions started in earnest. Quinton rode to town at a gallop to fetch the midwife, Mrs. Garrett, an older woman who had delivered half the babies in the county. "First babies usually take their time," Mrs. Garrett said, examining Fiona. "But this one seems eager to meet the world. We should have a new little Oakes before midnight." She was right. At 11:30, after hours of pain that had Fiona convinced she was being torn in half, a baby's cry split the air. Mrs. Garrett cleaned the infant quickly and placed the squirming bundle in Fiona's arms. "You have a son," she announced. "A healthy, perfect baby boy." Quinton, who had been pacing the main room during the birth, came in at Mrs. Garrett's call. He stopped in the doorway, staring at his wife and child with an expression of such wonder that Fiona felt tears prick her eyes. "Come meet your son," she said softly. He crossed the room slowly, as if in a dream, and sat on the edge of the bed. Fiona shifted the baby so Quinton could see his face properly. A wrinkled, red face with a shock of dark hair and eyes that were trying to focus on this new, bright world. "He is perfect," Quinton breathed. "Fiona, you did this. You grew him and brought him into the world. You are the most amazing, most beautiful woman I have ever known." "What should we name him?" Fiona asked. They had discussed names for months without settling on one. But now, looking at their son, Quinton said, "Samuel. After your mother's father, if you are willing. You told me he was the one person in your family who was kind to you." "Samuel Oakes," Fiona said, testing the name. "I like it. Yes, let us call him Samuel." Little Samuel was a good baby, healthy and strong. He had Quinton's hazel eyes and Fiona's determined chin. Quinton was besotted from the first moment, spending every spare minute with his son, talking to him constantly, even though Samuel could not possibly understand. "You see, son," Quinton would say, holding Samuel against his shoulder while Fiona prepared supper. "Your mother is the most beautiful woman in Nevada. You are going to grow up knowing that, and you are going to treat all women with respect because of the example she sets. She is strong and brave and kind, and we are both lucky to have her." Fiona would listen to these one-sided conversations and feel her heart swell with love. She had never imagined this life was possible, never dreamed she would have a husband who adored her and a son who depended on her. It was almost too much happiness, and sometimes she feared it could not last. But it did last. Years passed, and their life together only grew richer. Samuel grew into a sturdy toddler, then a curious boy who followed his father everywhere and clung to his mother when he was tired. 2 years after Samuel's birth, Fiona had a daughter they named Grace, a quiet baby with dark hair and watchful eyes. 3 years after Grace came another son, Thomas, who was loud and energetic from the day he was born. Quinton expanded the house to accommodate their growing family, adding 2 bedrooms and a larger kitchen. The ranch prospered, growing to become one of the most successful in the region. Fiona's garden became legendary, and she started selling her preserves and vegetables in town. They hired help during the busiest seasons, but the core of the operation remained the 2 of them, working side by side as they always had. And through it all, through the years and the challenges and the joys, Quinton kept his promise. Every single day, without fail, he told Fiona she was beautiful. When her hair started showing threads of silver, he called her beautiful. When she gained weight from the pregnancies and could not lose it, he called her beautiful. When she developed lines around her eyes from years of squinting in the Nevada sun, he called her beautiful. When she was 40 years old, worn down by a hard week of work and feeling every one of her years, he took her face in his hands and said, "You are the most beautiful woman I have ever known, and I fall more in love with you every day." By their 15th anniversary, their children were growing into young people with their own personalities and dreams. Samuel, at 14, was already talking about expanding the ranch, taking over from his father one day. Grace, at 12, was quieter, more studious, always with her nose in a book. Thomas, at 9, was the wild one, always getting into mischief but impossible to stay angry at for long. Fiona stood on the porch one October evening, watching Quinton and the children work with the horses in the corral. The sun was setting, painting everything golden, and she felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over her. She thought back to the frightened woman who had stepped off the stagecoach 15 years ago, certain she was heading toward disappointment and regret. Quinton saw her watching and waved, then said something to the children and headed toward the house. He climbed the porch steps and pulled her into his arms, kissing her thoroughly despite the children's groans of embarrassment from the corral. "What was that for?" Fiona asked, laughing. "Do I need a reason to kiss my beautiful wife?" he replied, grinning. "I was just thinking about the day you arrived, how nervous I was, how afraid you would take one look at this dusty ranch and want to leave." "I was the one who was afraid," Fiona said. "I thought you would be disappointed when you saw me." "Best day of my life," Quinton said firmly. "Well, one of the best. The day you agreed to marry me was pretty good too, and the days our children were born. But that first day, when I saw you standing there looking so brave and scared at the same time, I knew my life was about to change for the better." "You called me beautiful before you even really looked at me," Fiona remembered. "I thought you were mocking me." "I was telling you the truth," Quinton said. "The same truth I have been telling you every day for 15 years. You are beautiful, Fiona Oakes. You are the most beautiful woman I have ever known, and I will keep telling you that every day for the rest of our lives." She reached up and touched his face, this man who had transformed her world with his stubborn insistence that she was worthy of love. "I believe you now," she said. "It took me years, but I finally see what you see. I am beautiful because I am loved. I am beautiful because I am strong. I am beautiful because I survived everything that tried to break me and came out the other side ready to live." "You are beautiful because you are you," Quinton corrected gently. "The love just lets you see it." They stood together as the sun finished setting, their children's laughter carrying on the evening breeze. Fiona thought about all the women who had been called beautiful their whole lives, who had relied on their looks to open doors and create opportunities. She thought about how she had envied them for so long, wished she could trade places with them. But she would not trade places now, not for anything. Because those women might have beauty that faded with time, but she had something infinitely more precious. A man who saw beauty in her scars, her crooked nose, her imperfect features. A man who had loved her when she could not love herself and had been patient enough to wait until she learned how. The years continued to pass, bringing new challenges and new joys. Samuel married a girl from town when he was 22, bringing home a spirited young woman named Elizabeth who fit into the family as if she had always been there. Grace surprised everyone by announcing she wanted to be a teacher and moved to Carson City to attend the normal school. Thomas, true to his nature, left home at 18 to try his luck in the silver mines before eventually coming back to the ranch, claiming he had gotten wanderlust out of his system. Quinton's hair went completely gray, and his face became more weathered, but his hands remained steady and his love never wavered. Fiona developed arthritis in her hands, making sewing difficult, but she found she preferred working in the garden anyway, teaching her grandchildren how to coax life from the Nevada soil, because there were grandchildren, eventually. Samuel and Elizabeth had two girls and a boy. Grace came home during the summers with stories of her students. Thomas married late, at 30, to a widow with 2 children of her own, instantly giving Quinton and Fiona 2 more grandchildren to dote on. The house that had once seemed too small for 2 people became too small for holiday gatherings, so they built a large addition with a dining room that could seat 20. The ranch continued to prosper under Samuel's management, with Thomas working alongside his brother. The Oakes name became synonymous with quality cattle and fair dealing throughout Nevada. Quinton and Fiona grew old together, their bodies wearing down even as their love remained constant. On their 35th anniversary, Quinton took Fiona on a trip to San Francisco, something they had always talked about but never done. They stayed in a fancy hotel, ate in fine restaurants, and walked along the waterfront holding hands like newlyweds. "You have any regrets?" Quinton asked one evening as they watched the sun set over the Pacific Ocean. "None," Fiona said immediately. "Not a single one. Do you?" "Only that I did not find you sooner," Quinton replied. "Think of all the years we could have had together if I had sent that letter 10 years earlier." "Then we would not have the life we have now," Fiona pointed out. "We would be different people. Everything happened exactly when it was supposed to happen." "You are right, as always," Quinton said. He pulled her close, and she rested her head on his shoulder. "You are still the most beautiful woman I have ever known." "You have been telling me that for 35 years, Fiona said, smiling. "And I will tell you for 35 more if God grants us the time," Quinton promised. They did not get 35 more years, but they got close. Quinton lived to be 76, Fiona 73. Quinton went first, peacefully in his sleep one autumn night with Fiona holding his hand. His last words to her were, "You are so beautiful, my love. I will wait for you." Fiona lived 2 more years, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, kept going by her garden and her determination to see the youngest grandchild, Thomas's daughter, graduate from school. She made it to the graduation and 2 weeks beyond. The night before she died, Grace sat beside her bed and asked, "Mother, what is your happiest memory?" Fiona did not have to think long. "The day I arrived in Yarrington," she said, her voice thin but clear. "The day I stepped off that stagecoach certain I was making the biggest mistake of my life, and your father looked at me and called me beautiful. That was the day my real life began." "He loved you so much," Grace said, tears streaming down her face. "We all saw it. Everyone saw it." "You two were an example of what marriage should be." "He taught me to love myself," Fiona said. "That was his greatest gift to me. He saw beauty in me before I could see it in myself, and he never stopped telling me until I believed it. Every single day for 37 years he called me beautiful. Every single day." She closed her eyes and a smile crossed her face. "I can hear him now, telling me to hurry up. He says he has been waiting long enough and I am as beautiful as ever. She died that night, slipping away so peacefully that at first Grace did not realize she had gone. They buried her next to Quinton in the small cemetery outside Yerington, under a cottonwood tree that provided shade even in the hottest summer. The headstone Samuel commissioned was simple. Fiona Walsh Oakes, 1856–1929. Beloved wife, mother, and grandmother, she was beautiful. Years later, when the grandchildren were grown with children of their own, they would tell the story of Quinton and Fiona. They would talk about the mail-order bride who had never been called beautiful and the cowboy who called her beautiful every day. They would explain how true love had nothing to do with perfect features or flawless skin, but everything to do with seeing someone fully and loving them completely. And in Yerington, Nevada, where the ranch still stood and the Oakes name still meant something, people remembered the couple who had proven that beauty was not something you were born with, but something you could find in the way someone looked at you, in the steadiness of their hands, in the promises they kept, in the life they built together, day by day, year by year, for nearly 4 decades. The mail-order bride had never been called beautiful before she came west. But the cowboy had called her beautiful every day, and in doing so had given her a gift more precious than gold: the ability to see herself as worthy of love, to see herself as strong, capable, and yes, beautiful. It was a love story that transcended the ordinary definitions of romance. It was about transformation, not of appearance but of belief. It was about a man who saw past surfaces to the soul beneath, and a woman who learned to trust that vision. It was about the American West in all its harsh beauty, about building a life from nothing, about family and perseverance and the kind of love that endures beyond death. Most of all, it was about the power of words spoken with conviction and love. How 3 simple words repeated daily for decades could change a life, could heal old wounds, could create a legacy that lasted generations. Beautiful. You are beautiful. You are so beautiful. Quinton Oakes had said it to Fiona Walsh every day of their marriage, and in doing so, he had given her the world.